Okay, so these are some thoughts that I had. Not this week. If you can look at the subtitle under the big title, you can see that I actually made these slides a long fucking time ago in October. Um, and I wanted to make the video, but I was too fucking lazy, and now I'm gonna make it. So yeah, I genuinely don't know how to give an intro to this video. I'm just gonna talk about some shit that I thought about, type shit. Okay, so the first thought that I had was about this psychological homunculus thing that I've been thinking about. And if you're looking at the screen, you're like, what the fuck are those guys? These are homunculi. Now, what I like about this photo, first of all, is if you look at the left guy, he seems pretty relaxed. I mean, he's certainly got this sort of alertness about him. He's like, oh shit, maybe, is that a bat over there? Is that like a lion or something? But he's not really freaked out. He's sort of just poised, and you can see his hands are ready, his legs are ready. Now, if you look at the guy on the right, I mean, it's sort of clear that he doesn't really know what's going on at a very fundamental level. He's just completely flabbergasted by whatever is happening in his visual field. And if you look at his mouth, I mean, there's really no reason for his mouth to be that open. I mean, what the fuck is he thinking about? Anyway, so I think most of you guys probably know what a homunculus is to a very rough degree, but if you don't, it's basically just an anatomical representation of the cortical tissue that is essentially dedicated to different parts of your body. So you can see that the lips, the tongue, and the hands seem to be very, very abundant in size because the brain dedicates more neural tissue to controlling your fingers and your mouth and your lips, right? So that's why, you can't really move your calf with the same precision that you can move your pointer finger, for example. And that's because the brain dedicates more, blah, 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 yeah. So I think that in the same way that we have this, kind of drastic mismatch between the way that we actually look and the way that our brain thinks we look through the sensory and motor cortices, there's a mismatch between what we conceive ourselves to be and how we actually behave and operate in the real world. We have so many defense mechanisms and belief systems that really guide our lives, and most of the time, we aren't really aware of how much this machinery that we have under the hood is driving us to pursue certain things, certain people, and to accomplish certain tasks, because our psychological homunculus is hidden from us. So if you look at this beautiful illustration here, this is kind of what I have in mind, where in place of limbs, by analogy, you would have different emotions and different functional complexes that are essentially controlling your behavior. So with this homunculus, we have this "I am not stupid, I'm smart" complex here, which is a really common one, and this is where psychotherapy comes in, because if I was a psychotherapist, my goal would be to help this person see their homunculus by basically trying to unravel it and understand why this person's problematic behaviors and thought loops, seem so difficult to stop. And this can be, such a difficult task because a lot of the time people have a rough understanding of why they do the things that they do, but their explanation is usually incomplete, and they've, rationalized a lot of the more uncomfortable parts of themselves to fit neatly into a more positive explanation. Okay, so the next thought I had was, what does it mean to love someone? So I was reading about something called objective list theory in moral philosophy, which is basically the idea that there's some list of stuff which would maximize our well-being, and these things are attitude independent, which means, whether or not you like or dislike those things has no bearing on whether or not they are actually good for your welfare or your general well-being. So for example, going to the doctor would be one of these. Okay, keep this in mind. And then basically, I was scrolling and I saw this meme on Instagram, which this made me laugh really hard, and it catalyzed this sapling of a thought in my brain where I was like, okay, hold on. I was just reading about objective list theory. What about if I extrapolated this to love? Is there someone out there for you who is perfect for you? They satisfy all your conditions, they check all your boxes, and how do you deal with this hypothetical person while you're already in a relationship with someone? Now, you might say here, yeah, but if I'm in a relationship, I am with that person, my partner is perfect, but I think that's probably wrong, honestly. I think, at least in terms of how we usually define perfect in everyday language, because, people don't have an infinite selection of dating partners. And so, like realistically, there could be someone who is technically better for you, hypothetically, while you're already in a relationship. And when you date someone, hopefully they're really amazing and you really appreciate them and you're deeply attracted to them. But there are going to be traits that, even if they don't bear, any like super negative weight on the relationship, these traits could be better. Like they could be more optimal for like how the both of you function, right? So I don't know, maybe your partner's really dumb, for example, and this kind of annoys you sometimes. So if you found another person who has all the traits of your current partner, but they weren't dumb, I mean, what reasons are keeping you from being with that person? Like, why are you still in love with the dumb one? Now, I think a flaw in how a lot of people conceptualize love is believing yourself to be in love with someone on a trait-based level. So I think sometimes what's so alluring about someone isn't really the fact that they're like perfect on every single metric, but I think what's alluring about someone is that they kind of comprise like this painting, like this unique painting of like everything that's imperfect or interesting about them. And what you're in love with about the person is this painting, this holistic view of them that is more beautiful than the mere sum of its parts, like the traits that you can list about them. And that's why I think, when people ask their partners, like, why do you like me? Or tell me why you like me, the question is sort of misplaced because it will never really return the real answer. The real answer is something that kind of immediately dissolves into something else, like a rational explanation of your affection when you try to give it to them, which never sounds right. And I think that real love can really only be felt and experienced, and when you try to convey it through language just atomizes it until it really no longer maps onto how you actually feel about the person. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so this last thought, this one is a bit more, I guess, like technical than the other ones. This one is about heterotypic continuity and the lost beauty of childhood. Wow, so what is heterotypic continuity, right? What the fuck am I looking at on the screen? So heterotypic continuity is a term in developmental psychology which refers to an observable behavior changing over time, even though the underlying behavioral function is the same. So, for example, let's take the behavioral function of aggression, okay? And we find that aggressive children exhibit more hitting and biting on average compared to the other children in the, whatever sample we're looking at. Now, when these aggressive children grow up, let's assume that their level of aggression stays the same, okay? So over time it stays the same, and they become aggressive adults, right? The question is, well, are the aggressive adults going to, exhibit more hitting and biting on average compared to, other adults around them? Now, hitting, maybe. Biting, probably not. The key here is that the behavior is going to change, right? So, you're more likely to find that aggressive adults are exhibiting something like verbal aggression, right? Whereas children are not going to be exhibiting as much verbal aggression, even if they're aggressive. Okay, so I hope that explanation's clear. Heterotypic continuity, just as like a term in general, is usually used in psychopathology to explain changes in like negative behavior, like aggressive behavior, as I explained. But I wanted to try and think about it in a more positive light and try to explain that positive behavior can change, right? So I think that as you get older, it's easy to take on like a really negative view of people. That a lot of people are just selfish, and a lot of people are like weathered by the constant assault of like just meaninglessness and the tragedy of everyday life, and how gray and dull everything can get. And while I don't think that human beings aren't selfish and aren't cruel sometimes, I think that you have to also consider that human beings are like a kaleidoscope of ugliness and beautifulness sewn into each other. And unfortunately, humanity has, kind of become like estranged from itself. And I think people in general have a hard time integrating, the good and the bad of people in general into one cohesive, integrative thing. And so, in the same way that the person who is, verbally aggressive still contains within themselves the biting and hitting child from like 20 or 30 years ago, the person who's writing books or working in a hospital or engineering trains and shit, these people are still children. They're still the children that were drawing on the sidewalk or walking kids who got hurt at recess to like the principal's office to get like a, one of those like packs of ice, you know what I'm talking about? Everything about human beings changes, but we all stay the same in some way, and I think that a part of that sameness is the innocence and purity and beauty of childhood. It just expresses itself in different ways. And so I think that the exact same mechanisms that make us, remain horrible and evil also stand to make us remain beautiful and innocent. And you should never conceptualize human beings as being on either side more than the other. So, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about recently. I really don't I don't know how to end this video, but excuse me for my voice. I'm fucking sick, unfortunately. I've been congested for like 18,000 fucking years, but yeah. Anyway, bye bye.